We're in the Hall of Fisheries in the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic here today. It's a lovely display about Arthur Dauphiny and about the blocks that he made for generations. These are Dauphiny blocks, same blocks we have on the ship. Kind of cool display here showing different purchase arrangements. So when we talk about blocks, they're the physical pulley of the ship. If you talk about block and tackle, it's the pulley in the line. Here we are in the Spinoff Industries display. This was true many years ago as it is today. Back in the day, you had sail makers, barrel makers, box makers, all the things that were needed to run a schooner. Today, Bluenose 2 employs 44 different companies, from grocers to mechanics to engineers to dory makers and block makers. We regularly employ 44 different companies to help keep the schooner going. So if you look at the ship as a single entity, it's not the case. It's a wide entity that supports a whole community. One of the parts about understanding the history of the fishery is understanding how it first started with the first people that were here. This is a great example of a birch bark canoe that was built a long, long time ago. They're still being built by a McMilder by the name of Todd Labrador. One of the great opportunities we've had on the ship as of late was to meet Elder Labrador, and we're hoping to meet him again this year in Pictou for the 250th anniversary. I'm hoping that our paths will cross once again and we'll get to meet Elder Labrador and trade some stories with his seagoing birch bark canoes and our big black schooner. Over 80 lives lost in great disaster. August always brings strange weather to the North Atlantic, often because of hurricanes passing from the Caribbean up through our waters. We were thinking yesterday as we were out, and it was flat calm, not a draft of air, what it'd be like to be on the Grand Banks. Flat calm and a swell starting to rise, and you know that there's a storm approaching and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to sit there and wait for the storm to come. And that could well be a hurricane or the tail end of a hurricane passing through. 1926 and 27 were particularly brutal, with a lot of ships lost from East Coast ports, from Newfoundland, from Lunenburg in particular, and further down into Boston. Life was hard then, and without proper weather forecasts and without an engine to move you out of the way, you were at the mercy of the weather. And I think the August gales are a fine example of that. There's a couple of great books written about it. One of them is by Gerald Hallowell, The August Gales. It's great history there, great understanding of what it was like for a family to lose all the men, or for a community to lose a great deal of the men. It changed life in the community and changed lives in the families. And safety at sea is still a thing today and still a focus of this museum. And it's well worth a drop by and see how that's changed from the 1800s through till today. Here's a neat little display about fog. Back in the day on the Grand Banks, if the schooners were anchored and there were steamers coming through, there was often no chance to get out of the way, and the steamers would just run the schooners down, leaving the men either in the dories or to abandon the ship to dories. Fog still impacts us today. There's still collisions in fog. There were still collisions locally in fog this summer. The lack of visibility makes life difficult. We have radar, we have the automatic identification system, which will show us commercial ships in the area, but you still need to have a safe speed. You still need to practice good seamanship, good lookout, and try and survive the fog that is our perpetual enemy. Here's a fine model of a long lining dory as was carried on the Bluenose 2. This particular model was built by local model making artist Ben Verberg. It's his model, his likeness in the bow of the dory. So we can see here the crew are underrunning the dory. So they have a long line anchored both ends and then a series of hooks along the line. So as the bowman pulls the line aboard, he'll take the codfish off. His dory mate will rebait the hooks and pass it over the stern of the dory. This way, they can underrun their gear, take the cod off, rebait the hooks, and go back to the schooner, either by oar or sail. Here they'll unload the dory and probably have a mug up and a bit of rest before taking the dory back out to underrun the gear again. Long days on the Grand Banks for the fishermen. They'd start well before light, baiting up the tubs of trawl, they would go out and set the trawl in all kinds of weather. So let's go have a look at the schooner and see how she positioned herself on the banks. Here we are with another Ben Verberg model. If you come to the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic, you have to spend time in this room, and you have to spend time looking at these models. They are absolute works of art. So this is modeled of a schooner about 1900. You can see a small dory here coming back to the schooner under sail, so that would have been a good day for them. They didn't have to row all the way back. And then on the schooner, you can see them passing up tubs of trawl. So they would, or their tubs, they would probably pitchfork the codfish onto the deck, where the throaters and headers would get to work taking the livers out, cutting the heads off, and getting the fish ready to be packed in salt below decks. You can see she has her riding sail set and no other sails. The riding sail helps keep the schooner head to wind. Does her bow rise free of Mother Sea? It's a great quote from a Stan Rogers song about the Blue Nose and this great Maurice Crosby photo. With slight Photoshop retouching, the ship is in full glory here. It's great to see her under a full press of canvas and in a large format where you can see the details. Today, with social media, we see this a lot more often, and part of our job on the ship is to put photos like this out. When this was taken, this was quite a thing. There's a few of these around Halifax. I still see them on display, and it's one of my favorite photos of the ship. This is a drafting table of William Rui. Besides the Blue Nose, many great designs came across this table. He was a known well designer of yachts, and there's still Rui yachts sailing to this day, and lots of fishing schooners as well. The man certainly had an eye for design and form and function, and the artistry that goes with designing ships like this. On this side we have the man himself. This is a lovely bronze sculpture of Captain Angus Walters. That really captures his quiet determination and his spirit. This was designed by local artist Chippy Kennedy, and then cast by schooner builder himself, Warren and Andrea Manthorne. So I love that I know the history behind the piece, and I love the spirit that's captured herein.